welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something really fascinating, not just a business story, but the story of a continent kind of rewriting its economic rules in real time.
Yeah, picture this. Africa. 1.3 billion people, a collective GDP around what? $2.4 trillion? Sounds enormous.
It does. But here's the kicker. The banking infrastructure, for a long time, was, well, let's call it underdeveloped.
Seriously underdeveloped. You're talking only about 40% of adults holding formal bank accounts.
Which is just wild when you compare it to North America or Europe, where it's closer to 95%. That's not just a gap, it's like a chasm.
A huge chasm. But what's really interesting, and this is key, is that this gap, this need, it didn't lead to stagnation.
No, quite the opposite, right?
Exactly. It created this incredibly fertile ground for, technological leapfrogging.
Yeah.
Bypassing the old ways entirely.
And the epicenter for a lot of this. Lagos, Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, just buzzing with energy.
And right out of that energy, two major players emerged.
Okay.
Paystack and Flutterwave both started with this big promise: revolutionize online payments.
Both were quickly called the Stripe of Africa, which is pretty accurate, actually.
Very accurate, shared goal, but as we'll see, their paths diverged pretty dramatically.
It's more than just Company A versus Company B.
Yeah.
It's a story about huge ambition, really clever strategic moves, and this intense competition that's shaping modern business, not just in Africa, but globally.
Absolutely. Now, before we really get into the thick of it, just a quick heads up.
Right, the usual disclaimer.
Yeah. Everything we're discussing today, it's based on publicly available stuff, news reports, company statements, public records.
Our aim here is really just to unpack the story, look at the strategies, the impact. We're not endorsing any particular view.
Precisely. So our mission for this deep dive is to pull back the curtain on this high-stakes race. We'll trace the history, look at the underlying factors that created this massive opportunity.
And really dig into the key decisions that define these two fintech giants, Paystack and Flutterwave.
You'll hear how these two startups, which looked quite similar at first, took these wildly different routes.
And hopefully uncover some moments of real business insight, maybe even heroism, and definitely pull out some crucial lessons for anyone interested in innovation, especially scaling up in these fast-changing markets.
So let's dive in. That African opportunity, you really have to paint the picture.
Yeah, that context is everything. 1.3 billion people, $2.4 trillion GDP, but only 40% banked.
It meant millions, maybe hundreds of millions, were effectively locked out of easy modern commerce. Paying online, receiving payments easily. It was tough.
Or just plain impossible for many. It wasn't just an inefficiency. It was this enormous, untapped ocean of potential.
Just waiting for the digital pipes to be laid down.
And Nigeria, being the continent's largest economy, it really became the hotbed, the crucible for this revolution. The demand was just immense.
But let's talk about the first of our main characters, Paystack. Chapter 1, maybe?
Let's do it, Paystack.
Okay, so their story kicks off in late 2015, not in some flashy Silicon Valley garage, but a pretty modest office in Lagos. Very. Founded by two Nigerian engineers, Shola Akinlade and Ezra Olubi. Really sharp guys.
And their mission was laser-focused, wasn't it?
Totally. Make online payment problems in Africa a thing of the past. Simple, direct. They started by building an API.
An API, application programming interface. Basically the digital toolkit that lets different software talk to each other smoothly.
Exactly. Making it easy for businesses to plug payments into their websites or apps.
And they hit a nerve pretty quickly. 2016 was a big year for them.
Huge. They became the first ever Nigerian startup accepted into Y Combinator, the famous Silicon Valley accelerator.
Which, you can't overstate this, was a massive signal. It wasn't just funding, it was validation. It told the world, hey, look at what's happening in African tech.
It was a real aha moment for the whole ecosystem, and the momentum just built from there.
Then came Stripe, the U.S. payments giant.
Right. 2018, Stripe leads an $8 million Series A investment in Paystack. That's not just cash, that's a major global player placing a big bet.
A huge vote of confidence. And Paystack kept growing.
Explosively. By early 2020, they had something like 60,000 customers. Everything from tiny shops to big online companies.
They really were becoming Africa's answer to Stripe. They were building the essential infrastructure.
They were the infrastructure for so many. And then came the big one, October 2020.
The acquisition. Stripe buys Paystack.
For over $200 million, which at the time was the largest tech exit in Nigerian history. Bang.
Now, it's easy to see that number and just think payday, But the story Shola Akinlead, the co-founder, told was really interesting.
It really was. He said something like, Paystack wasn't for sale when Stripe approached us. That's key.
Yeah.
He followed up with, for us, it's about the mission. I am convinced that Stripe will help us get there faster.
Okay, so that reframes it completely. It wasn't just about selling out. It was a strategic move for the mission.
Exactly. He saw partnering with Stripe, becoming part of this global giant, as the fastest way to achieve Paystack's original goal for Africa, leveraging their resources, their expertise.
That's a powerful strategic insight right there. Choosing acceleration through acquisition over maybe a longer, harder independent path.
And Stripe's co-founder, Patrick Collison, he echoed that potential. He talked about the enormous opportunity in Africa, pointing to online commerce growing like 30% year over year.
So Stripe saw Paystack not just as a company, but as their gateway to this booming market.
Precisely. And Paystack didn't just disappear into Stripe after the acquisition, did they?
Not at all. They kept accelerating. In April 2022, they kind of quietly got a really important license from the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Ah, yes, the switching and processing license. Sounds technical, but it's a huge deal.
Explain that. What does that license actually let them do?
It basically allows them to route transactions directly between banks. They can cut out some of the middlemen.
So more control, lower costs.
Both. It gives them more independence, improves efficiency, potentially lowers fees. It means they're embedding themselves even deeper into the financial plumbing of the country.
Becoming even more fundamental.
Exactly. And by 2023, they were pushing hard, expanding into other African countries, launching more advanced tools like merchant invoicing, virtual terminals, direct debit stuff.
All aimed at making payments simpler and faster for businesses across the continent.
So that's Paystack's arc. Focused start, rapid validation, strategic acquisition to supercharge the mission.
Okay, so while all that was happening with Paystack, another powerhouse was rising, taking a very different approach. Let's talk Flutterwave.
Right. Chapter 2, Flutterwave. Their origin story, also 2016, feels even more ambitious from day one, maybe.
How so?
Well, the founding team included Inolua Aboyeji, already a known entrepreneur, Olubenga GB Agbula, who'd worked at PayPal,
Okay, serious credentials.
and Adelik Adekoya, a chartered accountant as CFO. And their goal wasn't just Nigeria, it was Pan-African from the get-go.
Pan-African Payments API. What does that actually mean in practice? Because Africa is incredibly diverse, right? 50-plus countries, different currencies, regulations.
Exactly. That's the challenge and the ambition. Pan-African meant building a single, unified platform that could handle payments across all those different contexts.
Wow, so a company anywhere in the world could use Flutterwave to accept payments from customers in, say, Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, seamlessly.
That was the vision.
Would be the
bridge. And big names saw the potential early on. MasterCard, CRE Venture Capital were among their first backers.
And their growth trajectory was just vertical.
Insane. Early 2021, they raised $170 million in a Series C round. Boom. Instantly valued at over $1 billion. Africa's newest unicorn.
Joining the unicorn club.
Nope.
But they didn't stop there.
Nope. Just a year later, 2022, another round, Series D, this time $250 million, and their valuation tripled to over $3 billion.
$3 billion, making them at that point the most valuable startup on the entire continent.
Just staggering numbers, and the metrics behind it were huge too, processing something like 200 million transactions.
Worth over $16 billion annually, up significantly from the year before.
Yeah, and they reported reaching about 900,000 businesses, supporting 150 different currencies.
Their client list was also impressive. Uber, Booking.com, Flywire, global players using them to operate in Africa.
And a key part of their strategy, something GB Agbula talked about, was not just focusing on the Ubers and Netflixes.
Right, they looked beyond the big fish.
Exactly. He said they saw the opportunity in the ES&B space, small and medium businesses. They realized these smaller guys needed the same powerful payment tech.
So they built tools specifically for them, like e-commerce storefronts.
Yeah, tools to help small merchants get online, accept payments easily. It democratized access in a big way, massively expanding their potential market.
Smart, very smart. And like Paystack, they also secured that crucial switching license from Nigeria's central bank around mid-2022.
Yep. Another huge validation and operational advantage, leveling the playing field in some ways.
And it even got to the point where, by 2024, Nigeria's President Tinubu was publicly backing them, saying Nigeria was open to business and promising to remove obstacles for them.
That's significant government endorsement, but it's also fair to add some nuance here. This kind of hypergrowth across so many countries isn't always smooth sailing.
Ah, yes. There were some challenges, weren't there?
There were. In late 2022, they faced allegations in Kenya related to anti-money laundering controls. Their accounts there were frozen for a time.
Okay, that sounds serious.
It was. Flutterwave denied wrongdoing, and they continued operating and expanding. But it definitely highlights the complexities and potential pitfalls of expanding that fast across diverse regulatory
Right.
environments.
It's not just about the tech, it's navigating very real, very complex local rules and challenges.
For sure. So you have these two giants, Paystack, now supercharged by Stripe, focusing on seamless integration and mission acceleration.
And Flutterwave, fiercely independent, raising huge sums, aiming for total Pan-African coverage, becoming the continent's most valuable startup, but also navigating those expansion complexities.
Publicly, very professional, you'd see the founders sharing stages, being cordial.
But behind the scenes,
Oh, you bet the competition was intense. This was all happening when African tech was absolutely exploding.
that $4 billion investment figure in 2021 is staggering, double the previous high, mostly into fintech.
And 5 new African fintech unicorns minted that year alone. It was a gold rush, in a way.
Paystack's acquisition by Stripe was seen as this huge watershed moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Proof that you could build something massive in Africa and attract global giants.
Definitely. It validated the whole ecosystem. And Flutterwave's path, staying independent, raising that massive capital, showed another viable route to huge scale and impact.
Two different blueprints for success, both proving the concept on a massive stage.
And the race is absolutely not over. By early 2025, Flutterwave was making noise about a potential IPO.
On the Nigerian exchange,
That was the talk. CEO Agboola met with President Tinubu. While they stressed profitability was the main goal, an IPO would be a massive statement.
a truly homegrown African tech giant going public. That would be symbolic.
Hugely symbolic. Meanwhile, Stripe-backed Paystack is just relentless, signing up more merchants, rolling out new services, digital wallets, remittance APIs, virtual cards.
Still focused on making cross-border commerce smoother, leveraging Stripe's global muscle.
Yeah, the fintech race is still wide open. Both are innovating like crazy, pushing each other constantly.
Which brings us nicely to the takeaways, right? What can aspiring strategists learn from this?
Okay, first big one. The power of innovation driven by necessity. Africa's unique challenges, like that fragmented banking system, weren't roadblocks. They were launchpads.
The leapfrogging idea.
Exactly. Agboola said, Africa has always been known to leapfrog because of necessity. The market was, and honestly still is, huge and underserved. The potential is just explosive.
Second takeaway has to be those contrasting strategic paths. They show there isn't just one way to scale.
Right. Paystack, acquisition as a supercharger. Use a global partner's resources to accelerate your mission. Totally valid.
Flutterwave. Independent hypergrowth. Raise massive capital. Build it yourself. Become the dominant independent player. Also totally valid.
Both led to incredible impact, just via different routes.
And the third point, competition itself.
Yeah, competition as a catalyst. They were rivals, sure, but it wasn't like mudslinging or bombastic rhetoric.
It was a soft battle, fought through better products, smarter deals, faster innovation.
And that healthy competition, that constant push to be better, it lifted the entire African tech scene. Everyone had to up their game.
You know, when we talk about heroism in business, maybe it's not just the billion-dollar valuations.
I agree. The real impact, the heroism maybe, lies in unlocking commerce for millions.
Empowering that small market vendor in Lagos, the shopkeeper in Accra, with mobile payments, making it easier for someone working abroad to send money home.
They built the essential plumbing for a modern digital economy where it barely existed before. That's transformative.
And fundamentally, they provided undeniable proof. Proof that African tech hubs can build truly world-class platforms.
Platforms that solve local problems but also resonate globally. That proof of concept is invaluable.
So as we said, the race continues. New players are emerging, inspired by these two.
Learning from Paystack's code, from Flutterwave's playbook.
For now, these two are clearly leading. But the question remains, what's next?
Will Paystack, under Stripe's wing, manage to weave together all 55 African markets into one seamless network? That's a monumental task.
Or will Flutterwave pull off a successful IPO, cement its independence, and perhaps grow even larger, dwarfing everyone else?
It's fascinating to watch. But whatever happens next.
One thing feels absolutely certain. Paystack and Flutterwave have already fundamentally changed the economic landscape of Nigeria and indeed much of Africa.
They've left an indelible mark. And they've shown us really powerfully how sometimes the most intense competition can actually create the most profound positive impact.
You've been listening to Empire and Legacy, African Business Chronicles. Our hosts are Zuri Mwangi and Kwame Adeyemi. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, WhatsApp, X, Instagram, and YouTube. All links are in the show notes. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast platform, and share this episode with fellow business leaders. Main episodes are released each Monday. Our hosts delve deeper into the CEOs at the helm on Wednesdays. On Thursdays, we explore the global perspectives, the standout businesses and CEOs, emerging trends, and geopolitical developments, presenting both risk and opportunity. We're back each week, sharing more stories about the exciting business rivalries shaping the future of business across Africa. Empire and Legacy is essential listening for business professionals and leaders. Be sure to subscribe to be the first to know when new episodes are released. Until next time, stay tuned.